up in the middle of the day, okay?
Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grueling True Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by the Sheridan Report. Go check out Bobby Sheridan and all his game previews and predictions at Sheridan Report on Twitter or thesheridanreport.com on the internet. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster, and right now we'd like to welcome in my co-host, 1981 national champion, and more importantly, 1979 NIT champion, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
How you doing?
Okay. Our guest today, as we talk college hoops, 2018 NIT champion, Brian Rauf. How you doing, Brian?
Oh, I'll take an NIT championship to my name. Sure,
I figured I would put it because nobody knows who won it anyways. So.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right. He was a Wolford Terrier. Let's see. All right. So let's start off. Is that the damn dog that won
the Westminster Kennel Dog Show for the 45th time?
That's a college basketball team, Steve.
Well, it's a terrier.
Okay. So is Boston
freaking
University.
Rigged.
All right. Well, you're freaking rigged, and nobody cares about a freaking dog show where they abuse the dogs. Let's start off. Let's go back to Saturday's games, and Duke beat Syracuse at Syracuse 75-65. Yep. That's a big win for the Blue Devils, considering they're missing Zion.
Yeah, and I think it was a bit of a reminder that R.J. Barrett is still really, 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 really good. Duke, obviously, I think, needs Zion to win a national championship and maybe even make a Final Four, but they're still a team to be reckoned with, a top 5, top 10 team without him. It kind of just shows how high their ceiling is once he comes back and is healthy, which he will be here within the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay, Steve, is Duke a Final Four team if they didn't have Zion? Because I disagree with Brian. I think this team could win a national championship even without him. They're damn good.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with you. I think what's happening now is the big boys are ramping up. It's getting down to the final 4 or 5 games before they get into the tournament, the league championships or tournaments. The big boys are ramping up, and I think this is a great signal for everybody about Duke. And I think you made a good point, Mike, in the fact that they don't have Zion Williamson. They still can play upper echelon basketball. So I think right now I still stand by the fact that I think Duke is the team to beat in this tournament. Whether they win it or not, you don't know. And I know we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, Brian. They're going to rest Zion against Virginia Tech. Next game, going to give him another game off and just get him totally healthy back. It does appear he's coming back. There's no indication saying he's not. But, yeah, I think this is a big win for Duke without him, and it would probably scare a lot of other teams right now going, crud. We thought they would be vulnerable without him. And, you know, playing at Syracuse, how many thousands of people were in that thing, that dome? It was like 30,000 or something?
Yeah,
Didn't they do it at the Carrier Dome?
I think it was over
35,000. And, you know, it's an emotional game for Boeheim. I mean, there's all the reason for Syracuse to rise to the occasion, and Duke's held them off. So, Mike, I think Duke's still a team to beat, bar none.
Yeah, and remember this, Brian. Didn't Syracuse beat Duke when Duke had Zion at Duke?
But they did not have Trey Jones or Cam Reddish in that game. I still think Duke
Wait a second. This is my point, though. They're loaded, even without Zion Williamson.
I agree. I think they'll win the championship because I think Zion will come back. My concern with them is kind of what we saw against UNC without him, is the fact that they don't have as much depth without him. Depth is already kind of a problem for them, and without him it becomes a glaring weakness. And it becomes essentially R.J. Barrett or Cam Reddish scoring the ball and then nobody else. And they were able to get contributions from those other guys against Syracuse, but I think they need Zion to have a little bit more balance to their attack.
All right, so let's look at this, because I think right now there's like 4 teams that stick out from everybody. That would be Duke, Gonzaga, Virginia, North Carolina actually would be my 4th team that I throw in there. In Virginia, I mean, getting a double-digit win at Louisville is impressive.
Oh yeah, I think I throw Kentucky in there too. For me, I think there's.
I wouldn't
really
because I really, really, really despise the Kentucky Wildcats. So go ahead.
But see, Mike, you can't let personal feelings get involved in this. I mean, that's
yes,
the problem.
I can. Be quiet, Steve. Brian's answering a question. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
Virginia, the game against Louisville this weekend was interesting, was because the big knock on Virginia is that when they get down big in a tough environment like they were playing it in Louisville against a good team, which Louisville is, that they wouldn't have the firepower to come back and win the game. On that game, they were down 10 points, double digits in the first half. I think they were down 10 points at halftime as well, and came back and won that game handily by double digits. The narrative around this team that they're another bad offensive team because of the way they play simply isn't true.
Yeah, I don't think they're a great offensive team, but they're definitely better than what they were last year. And that brings us to Gonzaga, who beats BYU 102-68. And Steve, Gonzaga doesn't play the greatest competition in conference, but they do have some great out-of-conference wins. And when you look at this, it's not like they're just barely beating teams. BYU is a decent team. Could very well face IU in the NIT. But the thing is this.
Now, on a good day, tonight may signal the end of that.
Yeah, it'll be at BYU.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, BYU is not a terrible team, and Gonzaga beats them 102-68. So my point with Gonzaga is we already know they can play with teams like Duke. Now, when you watch them, a lot of teams, when they get in conference play, everything tightens up, the games tighten up, even though they're a significantly better team. But with Gonzaga, they just keep drilling everybody.
Well, on the West Coast, we get to see probably more Gonzaga than a lot of you guys do on the East Coast because they show a lot of those games out here. And I'll say this about Gonzaga. They are probably one of the most efficient basketball teams I've seen play all year long. They don't beat themselves. They don't make mistakes. They've got an incredibly good basketball coach. They've got tradition and history of playing in this tournament and having great success. I think somebody is going to have to come in. Gonzaga's not going to beat themselves. My only fear of Duke is only people who can beat Duke probably is Duke. They beat themselves. That's probably the only way they're going to lose it. But Gonzaga's another team like that where
I disagree because Duke has been very inconsistent shooting the ball. And if you get a bad night where you're not shooting the ball well and you're playing a Gonzaga, you could easily lose that game.
Right. Exactly. They beat themselves. If they have a bad shooting, then they beat themselves.
They just don't shoot the ball consistently well.
Okay.
Beating yourself, to me, is turnovers and mental mistakes.
All right. And poor shooting. That's a different opinion. Let's don't go there. But Gonzaga is a team that probably scares me. Not to scare me because I'm rooting for them. I'd love to see that team win a national championship. But next to Duke, I would say Gonzaga is the most legit number one seed in the tournament right now, even more so than Virginia. And I know Virginia's playing very well right now, but I would take Gonzaga over Virginia on a neutral court probably 9 out of 10 times.
And that's because you hate Kyle Guy. The leading scorer in Lawrence.
No, I don't hate Kyle Guy.
But
I don't hate Kyle Guy.
All right, let's transition.
He's a second leading scorer in Lawrence Central history.
Okay, he's first in the modern era. You were first in the Peach Basket era. All right, North Carolina.
Let's
that
put
would be
asterisks
the fourth
on
team
everything
that I would throw in here, Brian. And the reason I would put him here is they are very talented. Luke May's a beast underneath. When you look at North Carolina, though, the thing that impresses me is we question consistency. If they were still an inconsistent team, they don't beat Duke at Duke and then come back and just destroy Florida State. They beat Florida State 77-59. They controlled that game basically from the outset of the game. How good is this North Carolina team, and are they capable of winning a national championship against a Duke with Zion Williamson healthy?
Absolutely. They have as many weapons, I think, as anybody in the country. They showed flashes of it earlier in the year. They really dominated Gonzaga when they met in December, won that game by, I think, 13 points. Have the win over Duke, have a couple of big wins where you kind of see how good they can be when they're playing at their highest level and clicking on all cylinders. The problem is earlier on in the year they would have that home loss to Louisville, have some real kind of disappointing performances, but really the past month those have kind of been out of the picture. And the scary thing with this team is that it's someone else that beats you every night. A certain night, Kobe White, a star point guard for them, may go off for 30 points. The next time, Luke may have 30 and 15 like he did against Duke. Cam Johnson's capable of scoring 20 points every time he steps on the court. Nasir Little had 20 points against Florida State off the bench. They have probably 7 or 8 guys who are capable of leading them and beating you essentially by themselves. And that makes a big difference in March where you try and game plan and take 1 or 2 players away. UNC has 1 or 2 other guys then who can step up and carry the load.
All right. We go to the SEC, Steve. You got Kentucky, Tennessee.
Can I address it real quick?
You can address it.
Oh, okay.
I said you can
right now,
it.
All right, in bracketology, what we're seeing now is all of a sudden Kentucky, Brian, am I right? Kentucky slid into the 4th number 1 seed right now. Is that pretty well correct? Mm-hmm. But I see Kentucky right now facing a brutal conference championship. I mean, I don't know if they can get by LSU and Tennessee. I don't know if they can or not. I don't know if they're that good. So I think North Carolina is poised because I think right now North Carolina is the fastest developing
Wait a second,
team
Steve.
into consistency.
Steve, I think it's a lot easier to get past Tennessee and LSU than it is to go to the ACC and have to get past Duke, North Carolina, Virginia.
Yeah, but I think those are higher-ranked teams than what Kentucky will face. Huh? I think you end up seeing in the end North Carolina sliding into the 4th number 1 spot. I think they're playing that well. I'm not so sure right now that North Carolina isn't playing the best team basketball in the country right now. And again, next to Gonzaga, but they're playing tougher competition out east than Gonzaga's facing, and that may be a factor down the road. But I don't see Kentucky staying in the number 1 slot because I don't think they're going to win the SEC championship. They're going to get beat.
So let's talk about Kentucky, Tennessee, and LSU. Kentucky blows out Auburn, which was impressive, Steve. LSU squeaks by Tennessee. Now, the one thing that I see here is this. I took away to Tennessee. I was wrong. I think Tennessee is a second weekend team. And the reason I say that is they looked bad when they stepped up to competition against Kentucky. But now it seems like, you play a couple games in a row and you kind of get used to it. So I worried less about this team, even though it may sound weird because they lost LSU, but it's the way they lost. Because I thought Tennessee probably won the majority of those 40 minutes. LSU just got them at the end. So when you look at Tennessee and LSU, what's your take on them? And remember, you think LSU being a Final Four team or Sweet 16 is stupid, is what you told me at some point. I'm just bringing that up because Lucas Weiss says that you're finally jumping on the LSU bandwagon.
I had not seen LSU play a lot, and I watched the game. I watched that entire game, and first off, Tennessee impressed me too. I mean, that was a game that came down to one call, and I know there's been a lot of debate on Twitter whether that was a legitimate call or it's the whole argument about. To me, it looked like it was a foul. I mean, you can't just say because you're in the last 10 seconds of a game you don't call a foul that's a foul. When it happens is when it happens. And it was a bad break for Tennessee. But Tennessee, you're right, controlled that game for the most part. But LSU looked fierce. To me, LSU looked fierce, which you want a fierce team in the tournament. That's a team that's not afraid to go play to win. And I think LSU, and I apologize for being wrong about LSU because I had not seen them play a lot. But to me, LSU is a very fierce basketball team. And you kind of don't want to screw around with, Wolverines and Badgers and stuff. You may be a little bigger than them, but they're fierce animals, and Bengal Tigers are fierce animals too. They don't like to lose, and they play to kill you. And I saw that in LSU. So I revamped my thinking on LSU. LSU's a team that if they can keep their crap together, they can make a run. I mean, I predict them winning the SEC championship truthfully right now.
All right.
I think LSU's going to get it.
Big 12, we're going to talk about a couple games here. We're going to kind of lump them together. TCU beats Iowa 75-72. So my question with that is, did this put TCU firmly in the tournament right now? Brian?
I think so. It would have taken a lot, I think, for them to fall out, simply because there's not – in other conferences, we look at the fact that there's not a lot of opportunities for good wins. In the Big 12, there's not a lot of opportunities for bad losses. And because of that, I thought TCU would have been fine. But getting a win of that magnitude I believe it was on the road. May not have been, but
no, TCU
either way,
was at home, I think, against Iowa State.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Brian. There's not a bad case for bad losses. Go talk to Kansas State last night.
Well,
they kind of had a bad loss.
I don't think it's going to hurt them come tournament time, though, Steve.
Yeah,
Be
in
quiet,
terms of resume-wise.
Go ahead, Brian.
That would not.
Okay, but it's a bad loss.
Every loss is bad, Steve. Go ahead, Brian.
But the win certainly solidified their place as being in. They're probably on the 8-9 line, going to be in that 8-9 game either way. They have a couple more chances, though, coming down the stretch here. And they may be the team that kind of determines if Kansas' streak keeps going or not, because they still play Texas Tech and they still play Kansas State. If they get one of those wins, it could move them up a seed line or two. So opportunities are still there for TCU to even improve their draft stock, or not draft stock, their seed stock further.
All right, Texas Tech, Kansas, 91-62 Texas Tech. The two things that I take away from this, when I watch this, I think this Texas Tech team is the best equipped team from the Big 12 to make it to the Final Four, and I think Kansas could win a national championship if they were allowed to play every game at home, but they're not, so they're in trouble.
Yeah, and that was the big thing here. We've talked a lot about Kansas' struggles on the road, and those were on full display in that game. Texas Tech put forth their best performance of the season. They have the most efficient defense in the country, the best defense in the country, even better than TCU in terms of all the different metrics and rating systems that they use. And they got offense from people other than Jarrett Culver, which has been a problem for them at times this year. And when they're playing like that, they can beat anybody.
All right, let's go to Sunday, Steve. We're going to go to the Big Ten.
Hang on. Let me comment on that. Let me make a comment on that before we go.
The Big 12 game all year, but go ahead.
Yeah, I did watch some. I actually started watching basketball, which drives me crazy.
All right, I'll start asking you more questions.
I missed NASCAR practice, which killed me, but that's okay.
I know, because
I missed Kyle Busch's wreck on the last 5 laps. No, I'm talking about the fact that, in my opinion, having watched enough of the Big 12 now, I think pretty much it's the weakest of the 5 power conferences.
You're out of your mind.
I think the only team equipped to navigate to the Final Four is Kansas.
What?
I don't think the other teams they're not equipped to navigate.
Oh hell!
Kansas has been there, done that. They know how to play in these situations. Self is a good tournament coach.
Oh boy!
I think if you're going to say that any team, and at first I think no team from the Big 12 is going to make it to the Final Four. But if I was going to pick one, I would put my money on Kansas. I just think Self knows how to navigate these games. The other coaches are not as equipped as he is to get his team through and get his team ready to play one and done. And if I was going to bet on a Big 12 team, Kansas, they got dumped by Texas Tech. They come back strong. I think, again, this is another one of these teams where Self is dialing them in right now, kind of like Izzo, kind of like Roy Williams. Well, that's a –
Who'd they beat on the road?
All right.
Who have they beaten on the road?
What they've done is not important. It's what are you going to do?
What they have done is
What's
not
behind
important.
them and making no difference.
Well, so what you're telling me is it's not important that IU, has lost 4 games that they won. It's what they do when they get to the NCAA tournament.
I can tell you right now that if IU wins the next 4 games and wins 2 games in the tournament, they'll be in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I can tell you
that's
here,
a big if.
That's not going to happen. So
right, but if they did, so yeah, they control. They control their destiny. They have to win all 4 of the remaining games. But we're not talking about IU.
I know.
I'm just
we're
telling
talking
you,
about
in
Kansas.
my opinion. All right, you're talking over me, so I'm done. Go ahead, move on.
Really? All you do is talk over people. And now if somebody talks over you, you're done. All right. All I know is this. Texas
I'm
Tech
giving you the opportunity to talk.
Texas Tech is better than Kansas. And I think it's absolutely ludicrous that anybody would say anything different. Jarrett Culver alone makes Texas Tech more dangerous than Kansas.
Bill Self makes Kansas more dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Than Texas
Bill
Tech.
Self is such a legendary loser in the first and second round of tournaments. What the hell has Bill Self done? When's the last time he won a national championship, Brian?
I think the only one he's won was in 2008.
In 2008. Now, Steve, how many years ago is that?
Oh, sorry. Move on.
That's 11.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just. I want you to defend.
No, go
why
on. Move
Kansas?
on.
You can't give me anything other than Bill Self who is an avowed getting beaten in a tournament earlier than what he should, will have his team more prepared than anybody else in the Big 12. You said that the Big 12 was the worst of the Power 5 conferences. Is Pac-12 a Power 5 conference, Brian?
I don't consider the Pac-12 Power 5 conference.
Oh. You consider the Big 10 that, and the Big 10's not as good, especially at the top. There's nobody in the Big 10 that's going to win it.
All right. Okay. There's a much better chance, I think, of a Big 10 team being in the Final Four than there is a Big 12 team.
I don't think so. I don't know. Am I wrong,
all right,
Brian?
okay, well.
I could be.
The Big 10, I think, is
Who died and made Brian the expert?
Actually, you did, because the first time we ever had Brian on, you said he knows a lot more about football or basketball than I do. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. And he's the one last week when I asked him, I said, "Are you as smart as Joe Lunardi?" He said, "No."
Okay. What's that mean?
Not in terms of making a bracket.
I didn't know who Joe Lunardi was until I went to ESPN and looked at his bracketology. I didn't even know who this idiot was. So I thought Brian was a genius, but now.
So, Steve,
go ahead.
Do you know more than Joe Lunardi?
Not at predicting, no. But I know about playing the tournament more than Joe does, because I don't think Joe's ever laced up his shoes and played in the tournament.
Okay.
Would be my guess.
All right.
So, I'll take that one over him. Yeah, I've been there, gone through the whole damn gamut.
In 1981.
And face challenges and face opponents. Well, that's okay,
There was like 12 teams in the tournament, and they used to let white kids play. All right.
Keep knocking it down.
When I look at this, though, Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech played Nebraska when Nebraska was supposed to be good, and they beat them by 18 points. They beat a really good Memphis team by double digits. They lost to Duke in a game that was much closer than the score, 69-58 at Madison Square Garden. And when I look at it, they beat Kansas State. They beat Texas at Texas. I mean, they're a pretty good team. And I just think with Jarrett Culver, I just don't see Kansas having the athleticism to be able to win this, Brian.
I agree. The interesting thing in terms of the Big 12 race in particular is that Kansas has a far easier schedule than Texas Tech and Kansas State do. So it would not be out of the question for Kansas to still get a share. I don't think it'll happen. That certainly isn't out of the question. And Texas Tech has been really good all year outside of a stretch in the end of January where they lost 3 games in a row, and I think 4 or 6. Outside of that, they've been one of the nation's best teams.
All right, Steve, Big 10, Michigan State 77 at Michigan 70. What does this tell us about Michigan State and Michigan? Do you believe Michigan State's the better team now?
Only because of Izzo. I think Izzo has a slight edge over Beeline. It's close because those are both 2 great coaches. Talent-wise, I know Michigan State's still hurting from injuries. I don't think either one of these teams, one of them could sneak into the Final Four, but it would be a sneak in. That'd be the Big Ten's really only chance of getting a team in the Final Four. But I don't see either one of these teams being really a threat this year in the tournament. I don't think Michigan's that good, and I think Michigan State's too racked with injuries. I like both coaches; they're good tournament coaches, but I think it's ended up what we thought was going to be a banner year for the Big Ten. Really has met its demise, and I just don't think the Big Ten is going to be a threat this year.
I think the edge here, Brian, is Michigan State, and that's because of basically one person, and that's not Tom Izzo, it's Cassius Winston. I think he is maybe the most overlooked player in the country.
He's certainly up there. He gets a lot of credit, but he still may not get the credit he deserves. The bigger thing that I took away from the game was the fact that Michigan's offense still has been playing well below par for the past month and a half now. And it's been a struggle, and why they've fallen down the Big Ten standings over the past month and a half is the fact that they can't score consistently. They're relying on a lot of their perimeter guys going one-on-one and executing at the same level that we're used to seeing from John Beilein teams. They're not using Teskey in the post as much as maybe they should, given his size, but I also don't know if he has the skill to be the kind of player you would feed it to on a consistent basis. They're just out of whack offensively. And early on in the year, they were clicking at a high level, and I keep waiting for them to get it back, and they just haven't. And they haven't shown any real promise or progress on that end of the court.
All right, let's go to Xavier.
Yeah, and I think Brian brings up a good point there. Well, the word consistency comes into play here right now, big time. You're looking for teams that are consistent. Like North Carolina is consistently starting to play very good basketball. I mean, they're not, like Kansas. I know they're up and down. They get dumped one game, they come back and win big the next game, and there's no consistency there. And like Brian said with Michigan too, there's so much inconsistency with both Michigan State and Michigan. Both teams have up and down, but you look at teams like North Carolina, you look at teams like Duke, who's starting to show more consistency. Virginia's shown great consistency lately. I mean, they're winning everything right now. They're winning solid. And so I'm looking for teams. I know that when we won in '81, we won our last 5 regular season games. We didn't have a Big Ten tournament back then. So the last 10 games I played at IU, we won. I was 10-0. And we started playing right after we got beat by Iowa by like 25 points at Iowa City. It was the last game I ever lost as a Hoosier. We came home, and we started annihilating people. And we weren't the best team. We did have Isaiah. We had the best player. But we weren't necessarily the strongest team when you have North Carolina with 3 All-Americans on them in their backcourt, or the front court, I mean. But we were just playing such consistent basketball. We were making very few mistakes, very little mistakes. We were consistently delivering what Coach wanted us to do every single game. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what I base my judgment on, not Ken Pond, not any other ranking system. I say, who's playing consistent basketball right now, and who's got a coach that knows how to coach one-and-done basketball?
So you think Kansas is playing consistently right now?
No, I don't. But I said I don't think a Big 10-12 will make the tournament. I said I think if I picked anybody out of the Big 12, I would pick Kansas simply because Bill Self, I think, is a good tournament coach. I understand, he's not had great success in 11 years, but I still think he's dangerous. Well, nobody's had any better success than him.
They haven't. I think Jay Wright has. John Beilein.
Well, I'm talking in the Big 12. I'm talking in the Big 12. Big 12.
Okay.
So let's get off the Big 12. Let's get off that.
Well,
but I'm just saying that's the decision-making process I use. I don't use adjusted efficiency margins, whatever the hell that is, and we'll get into that next.
No, we won't, because
nobody cares. Get back to talking about the leagues. Yeah, nobody cares. Exactly. Who cares? KenPom. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit about KenPom?
I didn't bring up KenPom.
Yeah. Well, quadrant wins. There you go. There's another good one.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, moving on. Let's go to the Big East. Xavier beats Villanova. Villanova loses 2 in a row now. Xavier also beat Seton Hall at Seton Hall. I think when you look at it, the Big East, if you go with the top 10 teams, maybe as good as anybody. I don't think they've got anybody under 500 now, Brian. What's this mean to Villanova? And Xavier has 2 games with Seton Hall coming up. If Xavier wins out, wins a game or 2 in the Big East, do they have a shot to get in at 19-14?
They have an outside shot, I think. A lot of the Big East, we talked about this before the season, about how Marquette and Villanova seem to be a level above everybody else. You could potentially put St. John's in that mix, although they haven't performed to that level consistently. But the other 8 teams are all fairly even. And we've seen that kind of play out this year, kind of rotate who gets those wins based really on who's at home. And the key thing with Xavier lately is that they've had these big games at home, particularly the Villanova one over the weekend, which they got that.
Well, they did beat Seton Hall at Seton Hall, though.
Yeah, and they did. And so that's, I think, more of a feather in their cap maybe when it comes to bubble time than the win over Villanova, simply because a lot of the Big East bubble teams may end up having that win over Villanova, given the way they're playing right now. Villanova's lost 4 of their last 5, have stopped playing the kind of offense that won them all those games in a row before they lost to Marquette. They're playing more like they did early on in the year when they lost those games to Penn and Furman, where they're obviously a 3-point centric team, But during their win streak, what they would do is get back into the drive and kick type of offense that was so successful for them last year, the year before that, previous years, where they open up their three-point shooters by collapsing the defense. The drives aren't happening anymore. They're simply passing the ball along the perimeter, not even trying to threaten a drive to the basket. And they're still taking all those threes, but there's not as much movement in the offense, and those threes are more contested because they're not working the defense as much, and they're missing them.
Hey, Brian, is that when things start breaking down like that, is that a product of like teams just starting to get tired and starting to wear out a little bit this late in the season now? And, a lot of these leagues have been either a grind on the road a lot, and I've noticed that too with a lot of teams where they just stop doing the aggressive offensive play. And I wonder if it's because of fear of losing or they're just getting tired a little bit and need a break.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. Villanova went through a similar skid last year, where I think they went 3-3 in a 6-game stretch towards the end of February, where they just seemed tired and kind of ready for March. And there'll be a rejuvenation that comes with the calendar flipping and all the tournaments getting closer. My bigger concern with Villanova, and they'll get better, is the fact that part of the reason for this that we saw earlier on in the year as well is that they don't have a ton of athleticism in their backcourt as they've had in years past. They have guys who are good athletes, but not the ones who are necessarily threats to get by you every time. And so defenses, once they figure out how to play you and have some more scouting on you and video available, it makes them easier to defend, and Villanova hasn't, at least those guards of late, haven't countered the way they were able to earlier on in conference play.
Yeah, I know in my era, I know it's Stone Ages, Mike, so go ahead and rip me on that right now while I'm trying to get a word out. By this time of the year,
Steve gets it
there you go. See, I'm trying to make a statement.
I know, because you never interrupt anybody. Go ahead.
Are you done?
That's what I always ask
you.
Okay,
thank you.
Never are. Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
All right. At this time of the year in Indiana, when we were playing, we were only practicing about 45 minutes. We were only practicing about 45 minutes a day. We were doing a lot of film study, a lot of, we were practicing mostly just to stay in condition. And we were the most of our practice was involved around just some minor conditioning to keep our legs under us, but to let them rest. But then also we were doing a lot of scouting, looking at other teams' offense like that. But when we started the season, we were 3 hours and 15 minutes into practice every day. But by now, the great teams are sitting there drilling it down to where it's like 45 minutes of practice, an hour of film, maybe a little weight training now. We didn't do weight training when I was playing, but I'm sure they do some now just to kind of keep your lungs going. But I think it's critical now that teams start to rest their players as best they can, especially the teams that have a legitimate shot to win this thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a point now where everybody's in shape. Everybody's sort of ready to go. It's now a matter of, I think, X's and O's matter more, and rest matter more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree, concur. Mike, next conference?
Go ahead. I'll let you talk.
No, I'm done. I just want to finish
my
statement.
I said I was done, and I meant it. You go ahead. Are you prepared, or are you saying you're not prepared?
No, I'm not prepared. I thought you were running the show today. That was the pre-production meeting, so go ahead.
We didn't have a pre-production meeting. We have very rarely ever had a pre-production meeting, and I think it clearly shows every time we do a show. Don't you?
Okay, are we done? We wrap it up and get Bobby on?
I'll tell you.
I mean,
Brian, he's in love with Bobby, and sometimes, I want to talk about.
Well, no, I mean, if you're not going to run the
about Indiana and Wisconsin.
As long as Bobby keeps giving out those winners, don't blame him.
What was that?
So as long as Bobby keeps giving out those winners, I don't blame him.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead. You want to talk? Go ahead. I wanted to make a point.
Well, make a point.
I made a point.
What was your point?
We're not going to have a squabble on the air. All right, go ahead. Talk about Indiana, Wisconsin, idiots.
So what's your take on IU's chances against Wisconsin tonight, Brian?
it'll probably go the way all of their probably last 4 or 5 games have gone, where Indiana's close and then falls apart at the end just because they don't know where to go on offense. And they try and draw something up for Romeo Langford, and it kind of just falls apart. Wisconsin's a really good defensive team. Ethan Happ, I think, is going to be a problem, as he always is. It'll be a back-and-forth kind of game where Wisconsin pulls away late because of their defense.
Steve, do you expect the same thing as normal, or do you think IU gets it tonight?
From what I've read, the pre-work I read, Wisconsin's, I think, the best shooting three-point team in the Big Ten. Is that correct, Brian?
They might be percentage-wise. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't.
Well, percentage-wise, they are. And I think Indiana's perimeter defense has been suspect all year. I agree, concur with Brian. I don't think Indiana really has a chance tonight. I mean, I don't think the combination of coaching and playing has come together at Indiana right now. I think it will eventually. I don't think Archie Miller's a bad coach. I think he's a more than capable coach, but I just don't think this group of players with his coaching style. If I was Archie Miller, I would be looking to find some more coaches that can coach basketball rather than recruit. So he's got a strong recruiting staff, but I don't know how good these guys are at being assistant coaches because I've just not seen any improvement in Indiana. But I think Wisconsin, they'll just Happ is too good of a player, and I think if you put, Davis is not ready for him yet, and Juwan, if you get him into foul trouble, then we're really the proverbial creek without a paddle. So yeah, I agree with you, Brian. Wisconsin pulls this one out, and they're making a tournament run, so they have a little more to play for. I think Indiana's probably a little beaten up right now mentally because they're probably not going to play anywhere.
All right, since we're talking about Indiana, we might as well go ahead and bring up the fact that is Kelvin Sampson going to be the coach of the year this year?
I think he should be. You could throw a couple other people up there as well. But with what Houston's done this year, losing only one game, the fact that they lost the best player from previous year and are still really elevated their game, running away with the American, are now a top 10 team, which nobody thought Houston could be, at least for a very, very long time. It's been a remarkable job. You could look at Marquette's Steve Wojciechowski, potentially a candidate. LSU's Will Wade, potentially a candidate. But I think you have to give it to Kelvin Sampson right now because what Houston's doing is unprecedented for the last really 20, 30 years.
All right, Steve, how much trouble is Sean Miller in?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I think the fact he's probably in more trouble for not winning than he is the shoe situation. I mean, just based on what I've read, because I know the LSU coach is involved in this too, but everybody's kind of leading to the fact that they think that this is the the exit to get Sean Miller out of Arizona. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what this whole deal is all about. I mean, Brian, is the issue here is really not – they're just going for tax evasion, right? That's the whole thing, correct?
Well, no, they're going the technical charges that are brought against everybody in this FBI trial are fraud and corruption, essentially saying the coaches are
money laundering,
attempting to defraud the university, bribery, to all that sort of stuff. But in terms of Sean Miller, I think he's done after this year. With the amount of NCAA things that have piled up the past 2 years with him, along with this FBI investigation, throwing in the fact that they're not winning anymore makes it really hard to stomach. I think for Arizona, the Board of Regents has met several times this year to discuss Sean Miller's future and what they call the future of the basketball program, which is not a normal thing for them to do. I mean, they obviously need to talk about it, but not this number of times, which raises a lot of red flags for me. I think I would not be surprised if he's gone shortly after Arizona's season ends.
What about Will at LSU?
That's a more interesting case, I think, because though his name has been brought up in this before, this is the first real substantial thing that's come out in terms of him being subpoenaed to testify. LSU has been supportive of him. and he has not had the history of everything the past couple years like Sean Miller has. Plus, LSU is winning at a level that LSU hasn't won at in a long time. That certainly helps his case. I think a lot of it will depend on what comes out of his testimony in terms of his future, what LSU decides to do. Right now, I think it's more of a wait and see with Will Wade, but he's certainly in a much safer position than Sean Miller is.
All right, let's move on, and I want to talk about, and I know Steve's been waiting to talk about this, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Mike Daum.
Wait, can I address one more thing with the Arizona LSU thing? Just make a comment.
Sure.
Is that okay, Mike?
Sure.
This whole thing smacks again back to the NCAA by just not being willing to make a paradigm shift and get with the modern era of the amount of influx of money that comes into this game, the amount of money that's generated from this game, how big college basketball has gotten. They keep wanting to rule the sport like it was the 1940s or 50s or 60s when it's moved into the 21st century. And the money generated so much is a lot of what's putting a lot of these coaches on the hook and the underhanded deviousness going on. Why the NCAA just does not step up and say, okay, we have to refigure what we're doing. There's so much money coming out now, and so much of it relies on the players and the coaches, for that matter. But the money's all generated from them. And while the coaches get their fair share through shoe contracts that they do on their own and through camps and things like that, again, back to the fact that players just are getting nothing out of it is what's causing a lot of this deviousness and underhandedness that's going on. And now you got guys like, and I don't know Sean Miller. He may be a great family man. He may be a great guy. I don't know. But, now he's in jeopardy of losing his job because he has to play the game that way. And now you got a coach down at LSU who's kind of getting the same boat. You got other coaches on the programs that are being thrown in the same boat because the NCAA just won't budge off their sorry asses and say, we have to rethink this. We have to have, distribution in a better sense. We have to consider allowing players, if not to compensate them, allowing players to make money off their own names. And I think this is what's causing this stuff. Because if you did all this, then you could just W-2 it, and then you get a tax form return, and then it becomes legitimate and legal, and the FBI has no involvement in this. And then these things all go away. So in my opinion, this just all falls back on the NCAA just being pig-headed and willing, want to hoard all the money for themselves, and not, just realize that the game has changed. It's changed immensely. They changed the shot clock. They changed the three-point line. They've changed instant replay. But they won't change this part of it because all the money funnels back into Washington Boulevard Street in Indianapolis, where NCAA headquarters are, into Emirates bank account. So until that changes, this crap's going to go on, and I feel bad for everybody. I feel bad that this is the way the game. They're forcing the people to play this game this way because the game's going to be played. There's too much money involved by the shoe companies, television, everything, to not say we have to rethink this and redistribute. That's my point.
Well, I don't think everybody cheats. I think a lot do. But I think it's
no,
really
I don't.
bad
You're right.
Right. Well, that makes it really rough to feel sorry for Sean Miller or Will Wade.
I don't feel sorry for Sean Miller.
Well, that's what
I'm saying he's put in a situation. He's put in a situation where, he's forced. The Board of Regents has a specific meeting just to say we have to discuss the future of our basketball program. I thought we were student athletes first. Why is the Board of Regents not worried about? Let's get a cyclotron here at Arizona, and let's teach our people to be doctors. No, we're having a special meeting because our basketball team is embarrassing us. Really, seriously? I mean, that's where it's gotten to, Mike. That's how big it's gotten. The Board of Regents is having special meetings to discuss the basketball team. It's student athletes. Athletics is an extracurricular activity. Yet we're having special meetings now to deal with this because it's the money maker for that university. I go back to Butler. The Butler president said when Butler went back-to-back NCAA championships, their enrollment went through the roof. They had waiting lists a mile deep. Not because they had great pharmacy college. It turned out more pharmacists than any other college in the Midwest because their basketball team went to the Final Four and championship game twice. It's out of line. It's entirely out of line, and these coaches and players are forced to deal with it this way. They have no choice. The shoe company, You telling me, Mike, if Adidas doesn't come to you and say, I'm going to give you $100,000 for your kid to go play basketball or football at Alabama, you're not going to sit there and figure out a way to make it happen?
Huh?
Of course
you
are.
If they offer it to me, I would just go do it. Why? It's my kid.
Right, exactly. And you'd be against the rule, but it's not the problem. That's against the law. That's why we're having these trials. Because the NCAA doesn't say, you know what, Goodpaster's kid's a great athlete. It's his name. He's made a name for himself. He should be able to profit off his name. Why shouldn't he? It's his money. The company came to him. They offered Goodpaster's son that money to go play. In Alabama, or Nike is an Alabama school, or Adidas is a Indiana school, whatever. But if they want to do that, they have the right to make money. This whole thing is just so out of whack because the NCAA just is pig-headed.
It always has been out of whack.
All right, I know, and it needs to change.
I mean,
that's it.
You
that's
go
my
back
rant.
to Adolph Rupp and his cheating, or the betting scandal at CCNY.
Right. Well, and the greatest of all is UCLA and Sam Gilbert, and we all know that. That's the greatest.
Stop it.
That's the poster child. That's the poster child of all cheating in all of college sports.
Yeah, but see,
Sam Gilbert, UCLA.
In the end, if you're a coach, you don't have to cheat. You choose to cheat. Mike Doms, South Dakota State. What is your take on him? And this year, does he have enough around him to maybe get a win in the tournament?
Yeah, this would be, I think, the fourth or fifth year in a row South Dakota State will have been to the tournament. Haven't won a game in that stretch. Even though Dom has played well in these games, he can be a real matchup problem given his size of 6'9" and his shooting ability. He's not super athletic, which has hurt him against these high-end teams that they end up playing because they get 13, 14, 12 seeds. But this year, I think South Dakota State has a little bit more around him, as you mentioned. I still don't know. I think a lot of it depends on the matchup and who they end up facing. But his production, when they have it around him, obviously makes them one of the more likely teams to pull a first-round upset no matter who they end up playing.
All right, let's go and look at the AAC. I assume UC and Houston are in. What about the UCF Knights and Temple? Still on the outside looking in?
I think they're on the inside. They're on the bubble, but I think they're both on the inside. UCF, I think, is a little bit more on the bubble than Temple, simply because they don't have a real quality win. I'm not even sure if they have a quadrant one win.
Yeah,
so
I think the best win was against Alabama, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But their metrics are good, and that's enough this year to keep them sort of on the bubble. And the fact that outside of the loss to FAU, Florida Atlantic, they don't have a terrible loss or two or three outside of that. That's really bringing the resume down. They have chances down the stretch to pick up some big wins. I think they play Houston and Cincinnati. I think those are still left on their schedule. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But I think Temple is essentially going to have to play their way out. I think they should feel pretty good about their chances right now.
All right. The Atlantic 10, VCU, are they firmly in right now, or they still got work to do?
I think VCU is firmly in. Obviously, a loss or two could change that. But assuming they take care of business, I think they're going to get an at-large bid if they don't win the A-10 tournament.
All right. Because actually, I think Davidson and Dayton are teams that could actually pull a first-round upset if they could get in. What's your take on those two teams?
I agree. I think Davidson more so than Dayton, at least in my mind, if they were to get in. But neither of them have a resume where I would feel confident going into Selection Sunday if they have to worry about an at-large bid as opposed to winning the A-10. I think Davidson probably has a better shot than Dayton does at an at-large bid, but I still think that both of them would have to, at least with their current resumes, would have to win the A-10 tournament to get in.
All right, Steve, Big Ten, right now, who do you think is firmly in? Because as I look at it, I think there are 6 firmly in, but I think those other 4, when we were talking about 10 possibly getting in, I think all 4 of those have issues right now, which would be Ohio State, Indiana, Minnesota, and Nebraska. And I think Indiana and Nebraska are already dead, and I think Minnesota's on life support.
Agreed. Obviously Michigan State, Purdue, Wisconsin. I think, Brian, is it fair to say Iowa's pretty much a lock now if they don't peak on themselves for the rest of the season?
Iowa's a lock and Maryland's a lock. So those 6, I would say, are locked.
Yeah, Maryland. So there's your 6. The other teams, I think Indiana's out. I think Nebraska's out. Ohio State, from what I was reading, can probably play their way in if they do well. But yeah, it's from 8 to 9 to 10 teams, they're down to probably 6 solid teams. I don't see any more than that coming in because I still think the tournament's going to be dominated by the Big Four, which is Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, and Maryland, and Wisconsin, the Big Five. I think they're going to take the tournament. It's going to be 10, and then everybody else will get knocked out early. All the other guys have got to play somebody tough early in the tournament and get one chance at it, and then they're done. I mean, Indiana, I don't even think they're going to be even really an NIT considerate right now because they're sub 500 right now, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 13 and 14.
Yeah, so yeah, they're done. I mean, they're toast, and Nebraska's not far behind them. So yeah, I think 6 in the Big Ten.
All right.
Really, I don't see anybody with a real chance to win it. Possibly one in the Final Four, but somebody have to get hot like Michigan did last year. Michigan peaked at the right time and got hot and made a big run, but not seeing it happen this year.
I don't think Michigan has the offensive explosiveness that they did last year at the end of the season
Agreed.
to be able to make that happen again.
Yeah.
Defensively, they're
Agreed.
good enough to win a couple games maybe, but the offense is going to let them down in the end, I think. Brian, Big 12. I assume Kansas, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Kansas State are all locks. Anybody else here? Because I would put TCU in before I would Texas.
I would put TCU in as a lock, and I would put Baylor in as a lock. I think they have 6 locks as well. Texas and Oklahoma are those 2 teams kind of floating around the bubble with iffy chances.
Yeah, but Texas, will say they have a shot because they're Texas.
They have a shot because Shaka Smart always seems to find a way in with questionable resumes. I don't know how he does it. I think at the end of the day, only one of those 2 will end up getting in, and I would put Texas as that team. But Oklahoma has a good chance next week they get Kansas in Norman. If they win that game, then Oklahoma's in. And I think Texas is going to be on the outside looking in. It just kind of depends on what happens here down the stretch with both those teams.
All right, Pac-12, Steve, just Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I can't vow. I don't watch now that Alford's gone. I don't watch any Pac-12 basketball anymore.
Nobody does.
Yeah, nobody does, right? So yeah, and Brian can overstep me here, but I know I've asked him every week now. I don't see anybody but Washington making from the Pac-12. I think they keep saying 2 teams, but who's the other team that would go in with them? Would it be ASU?
Yeah, it would be Arizona State, but they're on the outside looking in too, and they're trending the wrong direction. Yeah. I think it's just Washington.
What's the problem with that conference?
There's a number of different things. I don't think they have the talent level that they've had in years past overall. A lot of the better recruits on the West Coast have gone east, whether that be Midwest to like Kansas or Texas, or further east to go play at a Duke or Kentucky. Part of it is, I think, coaching. They only have, I think, a handful of really good coaches in that conference, and of those, a couple of them are wrapped up in off-court investigations, whether that's FBI or NCAA or both related. It's a combination of different factors, but the talent level isn't there and the coaching isn't there, and the level of basketball, because of that, haven't been consistent enough.
Brian, would that just not go back to coaching? Because if your players aren't there, it's probably because you don't have the coaches that can coach them or coaches that can recruit them. So I think every problem here is I don't see more than a couple quality coaches, at a big-time level in this conference.
I agree. Occasionally you'll get coaches who benefit from an in-state kid wanting to stay in-state or stay close to home, or is more attracted to maybe the brand name of, say, UCLA as opposed to the coach and the actual program or what have you. But that hasn't been the case. None of those coaches have been able to even keep those guys. And there definitely needs to be an investment in coaching. I think UCLA is going to, hopefully, for them, make a splash, good name hire, which will help. I think Arizona could be on that path as well. Because I'm just going to go ahead and assume that Sean Miller is probably done after this year. And outside of that, Dana Altman at Oregon has done a good job during his career at Oregon, but has sort of fallen off of late, hasn't been able to replenish the program in a way that has been anything meaningful. And Mike Hopkins is doing a good job at Washington. Really, outside of those two guys, who do you really look at?
All right, let's go to the SEC. I'm just going to throw a couple teams.
Hey, Mike,
Mike,
Mike, can I ask you a question real quick? Just pertaining to the Pac-12.
Sure.
Again, you know football, and I'm going to just kind of deviate here just a little bit. It seems like the same thing has happened with the football programs in the Pac-12 too. Am I right to say that? Because really, there's only one or two teams that are really even mentioned nationally in the football side of things too in the Pac-12. Is that fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, you've got.
So
Washington.
Is this an AD thing? I mean, is this
It's
just
still,
a lousy fair West?
Steve, it's still a coaching issue.
Yeah.
Because you had guys. I mean, the only places that have coaches are the two teams that are firmly in there, and it's Washington and Stanford. And outside of that, I mean, Oregon has had a rotating door for coaches. Oregon State's fallen off since Mike Riley left. USC's been a mess. UCLA's been a mess. Maybe Chip Kelly will fix that. Maybe he won't. So, yeah, when you look at it that way, it's probably an AD problem because they're the ones hiring the head coaches.
Yeah. Right. So, that's kind of what I was thinking. Because when I listened to Brian talk about the basketball, I'm thinking, damn, this is kind of the same thing in football out here on the West Coast. And just like, it's maybe even above are the ADs hiring the right coaches and luring the right coaches out here, to the Golden Bear State or to, the whole West Coast?
Well, it's kind of like IU. The problem's not Archie Miller. The problem is Fred Glass doesn't know what the hell
Fred Glass, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a great recruiter and fundraiser. I mean, he's a great fundraiser for the university. But in terms of an AD and putting together winning programs at IU, and IU's got one of the wealthiest athletic departments in the country.
Well, that's why Fred Glass still has a job. All right, SEC.
Exactly, because he's raising money.
We already know who's in, basically. My question is Auburn, because Auburn at the start of the year I thought was a pretty good team. But now, they get destroyed by Kentucky, and it seems like other than being able to beat the Vanderbilts and the Arkansas of the world, that they're struggling more often than not right now.
They're just so bad inside, and we kind of knew that would be the case. We thought they may get some help with Austin Wiley coming back, but they've been really, really bad inside, and the way they play is conducive to taking a lot of bad shots, and that's been the case with them a lot of times this year. They've been jacking up a ton of threes, and a lot of them have bad shots, so they aren't shooting a high percentage from out there. When you add in bad shot selection, poor shots from the outside, and then not being able to rebound at any sort of competitive level or defend the post really at any sort of competitive level, you have a problem, and that's what's happened to Auburn.
All right, what about Alabama and Florida? Because I don't think Alabama belongs in this. I think Florida's got enough good wins to be in the conversation at least. What's your take on these two?
Mm-hmm. The big thing carrying Alabama is the win over Kentucky. And I think that's going to be enough to carry them in, assuming they don't have another one or two of those terrible losses that we keep talking about. Florida's in the same kind of boat. Florida doesn't have a terrible loss, but the win over LSU, I think, is good enough to carry them. I think we'll see both of them get in. We're not surprised to see Alabama in that first four, but both of them are going to get in as not very favorable seeds.
All right, and let's go to Steve's favorite conference, the Southern Conference, and I bring that up because of the Wofford Terriers, who are 23-4. But my question is, do they get two or three teams in? Because UNC Greensboro and Furman are both really good at 23-5. I think they're both like 23-5 or right around there. And Furman, has a win. I think they beat Villanova earlier in the year.
Yep.
This should be, am I wrong here? I'm not saying they will be, but this should be a three-team league or three bids in this league.
They should get at least two. Wofford's a lot. I think the best case for the SoCon is if the conference championship game ends up being UNC Greensboro and Furman. And one of those two win, getting the automatic bid, which gives them two, Wofford, and whoever wins that championship game. And whoever loses that championship game, I think if they were to have beaten Wofford on their way in, they could beat East Tennessee State too. East Tennessee State's a really good team. They're probably fourth in that group in terms of NCAA tournament chances. If they beat Wofford on their way to that game, that's the pathway I see for the SoCon getting three teams in, which is not out of the question.
All right. Steve, anything else?
No.
Okay, Steve. Are you sure?
In terms of what?
I don't know. Do you have any
Southern
other
Conference?
questions before we let Brian go? Not the Southern Conference. I know you don't know anything about the Southern Conference.
We've queued up an hour of time, so I think we've probably run it into the ground. So, I mean, I was going to ask about adjusted efficiency margin, but we'll save that for another show. It's another one of these things I just found reading about it. So, but it's not important. It's just another statistic that people that...
Yeah, because those are statistics.
Yeah.
Statistics are for losers.
I know.
But,
I agree. So,
all right.
I'm done.
Brian, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at brauf33. It's BRAUF 33, or online at bustingbrackets.com.
All right, guys. We want to thank Brian for coming in again. We'll get him on again. What is today? Tuesday?
Monday?
Yeah.
Today's Tuesday.
Are you good next Monday, Brian?
I should be good next Monday.
All righty. Well, we will talk to Brian again from Fansided and Busting Brackets on Monday. Right now, we're going to take a quick 1-minute commercial break, and then we'll be back with Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, sports fans. Chris and Graham here from the Grueling Truth Network.
Baseball's boring. It's too slow. Where's the fun in it? If you think that, then why the hell aren't you listening to Out of Left Field with us on thegruelingtruth.net?
On our show, we make baseball way more than just a bunch of numbers. You laugh with us, probably yell at us, and hopefully learn a thing or two from us.
Ever wonder what it's like to be a major league umpire, or why they made the call they did? Lucky for you, we have our own umpire on the show, even have big league umpires stopping by from time to time, and even the occasional big leaguer or two.
And all of that's just the first 10 minutes. Come on by and join the fun. Listen to Out of Left Field with Grant and me every week on thegruelingtruth.net, and give us a follow on Twitter and Facebook.
Just search Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham and like our page on Facebook. Or use our Twitter handle at OOLeftField. It's that simple. See you all this week when we put the ball in play on Out of Left Field.
All right, guys, we're back on Survive in Advance. I'm Mike Goodpaster with Steve Risley, who is a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame and sent me and my next guest a picture of his 1981 National Championship ring last night, unrequested. Bobby Sheridan, how you doing?
Mike Goodpaster, I'm doing great. I'm fired up and really, really ready for a good Tuesday morning.
All right. So let's talk about this first. I don't know if you saw this, Steve, but Major League Baseball, I guess, has asked, what was it, Vegas, Bobby, to not post odds on preseason games, training camp games?
They did. And, you know, the MLB is a bit short-sighted here with this asking of Las Vegas, because betting on spring training games has been going on forever. We know that. The MLB knows that. But MLB is thinking that it's based only really in Las Vegas and only really with a live bet, you know, meaning a guy walks in the sports book and puts a bet on the game, and it's limited to just Las Vegas, and the MLB wasn't going to fight it. But now that sports wagering is legalized in 8 states and going to be in probably half our states before the end of next year, is what they're projecting. They're worried. Their response is one of worry that games that are meaningless, games that are used more for practice and not for actually competitively trying to win, that it's dangerous for the sport to be taking wagers on those games. And really they're short-sighted because these wagers have been available offshore for forever, and they've not just been limited to Las Vegas. And bettors understand that they're preseason games and that you might bring in a 21-year-old rookie to close out a game just to see if he can handle it. When it's competitively, it's for practice. It's not to win. And so, but the bettor understands that. And the number one thing here is there are limits on these games. You might only be able to get $200 on a game at a casino or at a sports book. This is nothing can happen big in this situation. And anything that would be out of the ordinary type betting to where one team was just getting pounded across the board, multiple sports books, this would be a red flag, and it would be very difficult to have anything come out. And this is just an overreaction by MLB. So let me read to you what their response was, what MLB's statement was, that spring training games are exhibition contests in which the primary focus of clubs and players is to prepare for the coming season rather than to win games or perform at a maximum effort on every single play. These games are not conducive to betting and carry heightened integrity risks. No, they don't. And states should not permit bookmakers to offer bets on them. Limited and historically in-person betting on spring training in one state did not pose nearly the same integrity that widespread betting on spring training in multiple states will pose. Basically, the MLB is not really correct with their statement. It's just one of worry. Las Vegas's answer, no, we'll continue to offer a sports book on the spring training games. But it still was a big story yesterday that came out.
All right, Steve, any comments?
I kind of agree with the MLB a little bit, but I see Bobby's point too. If you want to bet, you want to bet. But, these games are not designed to be maximum competition where you're putting your best foot forward. You're developing players, you're trying things. And I don't know, Mike, how much of this smacks of Heat Rove's influence kind of here, where a manager could effectively put a player in without anybody really paying attention to it, but under the guise of the fact that it is, hey, it's an exhibition game, I don't care, but yeah, he does care. Does it kind of get in that direction, Mike, to you or not?
I don't think so, because you could make that case with every game that's played. And as Bobby said, the people that are making the bets know what they're betting on. They know the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Major League Baseball
That's
needs to shut the hell up. It's none of their business. They need to just police their players. And let's face it, there's probably a lot less chance that you'll get somebody betting on baseball today, especially when you got guys making $30 million a year, and the average salary is in the millions. So it's just Major League Baseball being assholes again, short-sighted assholes who don't understand that the way they've run the game for the last few years, or the last 20, 30 years, has hurt it more than any outside influences have done. They're the ones that encourage steroid abuse, so you get the home runs and bring the crowds back. And then you got to take the steroids away and not let the guys in the Hall of Fame, even though it wasn't illegal at the time. There was no rule. Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 1980s, up through the mid to late 90s, there was no rule about taking steroids from Major League Baseball, was there?
Not only mid to late 90s, early 2000s. At 98, it was the McGuire-Sosa chase, and McGuire was right. There was no rule against it.
But
so
on the other side of that, there was a federal law against it. So
yes,
you can play semantics with it all you want, but when you look at it, it was against the law. But Major League Baseball didn't have it in. But did Major League Baseball not have it in because it was against the law?
Well, you said it right. MLB, they didn't have it in, and it wasn't in. And then when it became so rampant, they turned their eyes to, their, however you say that, they turned away from it and didn't want to acknowledge it. And
because
then they had to acknowledge it because
it was helping them.
Yeah. Well, it brought back the game. Sosa McGuire brought back the game. And then they had to figure out, okay, we do have to put law on this because it's not healthy for kids or healthy for anybody we can't condone it, basically. And then they put in testing measures that can't keep up with the labs that make the stuff. And the guys are still taking. So, it is what it is, but at least they've done their part now to say, look, we can't have it. But it's still in the game. And it's in the game hugely in the Latin America. Every one of those kids coming up is on it, been taking it. They're 18 years old and look like they're 24, muscled up and strong and great. And but it's everywhere,
Steve,
I'm privy to
question,
some information.
What would that do for a 50 or a 60-year-old?
Kill me.
Why would it kill you? That you can lift weights.
I don't know.
Well, a
50-year-old
version of 50-year-old's version is just Viagra, right?
I don't want to lift anything more that's got a swing weight of a D4. And if you can figure that out.
Is that a club or is that your 4-inch D?
D4 would be the swing weight of my 7-iron. So it's a D4 swing weight.
Just
I really,
stop. You're
if I can get by lifting and swinging, if I can get to 100 miles an hour on a D4 with a swing weight at 60 years old, I'm having a good day. That means I'm hitting my 7-iron about 160 yards with the new and improved golf balls, which are like the juice baseballs.
Mr. Sheridan.
Which are all part of to make the game.
Oh, I thought.
Yes, it is, Steve,
okay.
And you're on the right track there, my friend.
Bobby, what is your top play for the night?
Well, okay, we'll get into some sports betting stuff here now for the night, and it's this card doesn't have the number of games, but sometimes that's okay. We've narrowed down to 3-4 selections here that are really very strong, and I anticipate this being a big day. And before I give you the top play, I'm going to give away the card basically, except for one game. We have Ohio State over Iowa tonight, and that opened up 2.5, and it's now 3.5. So the line has moved in that direction. But I do think Ohio State's a solid play here. Tonight in the NBA, really like the Knicks. They opened up getting 7. They're now getting 7.5 over the Magic, and that's a top play. And I really like the Knicks there. And we've added a late add to the report. We got some information that came out kind of late on this. Actually, early this morning is when I woke up and got information on this game. And we've added the Raptors Celtics game, and it's actually a stronger game than the Knicks. So I've added that on, and so I'm going to leave that just as the one suspense. Your listeners or your fans can, if they want that game, can go on the website and spend $10 and help out the computer guy with a $10 donation. But that game is a stronger game than the Knicks. And that brings us to our suspenseful moment because, guys, I don't do this on purpose. I don't look at trying to play up to the fan base or anything. If you remember I came on the air with you guys, I picked against Indiana with Nebraska. I mean, this was a couple months ago, and I've been on them, been against them, but this game tonight is going to be very joyful for the fans, and Indiana's going to win this game easily tonight, guys. This is a double-digit win at home. They've played, I think, 2 really outstanding ball games back-to-back, losing to Purdue by 2 at home and then going to Iowa. And these are winning games that they've played, and they haven't resulted in the win on the scoreboard, but not for lack of, I feel, execution, intensity, purpose, all the things that we talked about that was going on wrong during many of the games. There really aren't. I don't comment much on this because I don't feel it's my place oftentimes on your guys' network, and because we do have a national champion sitting there, and we've got some people that know the game better, but they don't necessarily know the handicapping aspect and the kind of the views, and sometimes you're too close to things you don't see as clearly. And Indiana has played really well, guys, this last 4 or 5 games. They have turned the corner, and this team is going to be dangerous if they could just get a couple wins and get in the NIT. Now, you're talking about the NCAAs. That's a bit far-fetched because that's going to include making a big run in the Big Ten and tournament, and that, they're going to play solid, but 3 and 4 wins over 3 and 4 days is going to be very difficult for a team that lacks depth. But if they get a couple solid wins here to finish out, maybe get a first-round win in the tournament, they're going to get an NIT bid, even at roughly 500, and they're going to make a run in that tournament, and basically because they're playing with a renewed purpose, Steve. You called this out a long time ago. And if they play with anything close tonight, anything close to the last 2 performances, and really 4 of the last 5 performances, taking away the Minnesota game, this is a double-digit win. Okay, Wisconsin's hanging on. They are very overrated. This was a team I tried to get behind, let's say a month ago. And to me, they've really fallen in my eyeball test. They run the offense through the post, but that guy is not finishing strong, Hap. Illinois defended him incredibly well on Monday, and Archie Miller, who's a very good defensive coach, is going to have a good plan on how to stop them. They haven't played each other this year, but that probably helps Indiana in this ballgame that they haven't. Indiana, Davis has been a huge upswing in his play, and I think this team is ready to finish, on a strong note. They're going to not only win this game tonight, they're going to win it handily, okay? And before I get your guys' comments on it, I've got a couple tidbits, and this is interesting. Steve will love this. Indiana has dropped 19 of the last 21 against Wisconsin. You guys know this because you live their seasons every year, but a lot of the fans may not. I don't know. But to me, wasn't aware of that. But Indiana, here's what's funny, Steve. Indiana's lost 19 of the last 21, but they still lead the series 81-39. And I thought that was kind of cool. And that just goes to show you what a great program you guys have had for so many years. And let's get a win tonight. You can go out and bet heavy on this one. Go out and get a little bit frivolous on this one and enjoy it. And when it wins, buy the report tomorrow and help out my computer guy with $10 donation. You can bet the money line at plus $1.10. You can take the 3 points, which are down to 2 now, whatever you're comfortable with, but don't sweat this one. That's my top play of the night.
Steve?
I'm only going to make one comment. I kind of got slammed because, I don't understand betting. You're right, I don't. And the only thing I'll say, Bobby, is what you see as good basketball and what I see as good basketball are two different books. I don't think Indiana's played good.
Not knowing anything about betting.
Bobby did.
When?
He said, I know the game, but I don't know betting.
Huh?
No,
right,
I didn't say that.
I don't know betting at all.
He didn't say that.
I
He
don't
said he
know.
knows betting. He doesn't know the game as well as others.
Well, that's all right. No big deal. I'm just telling you what you see. The only comment I'm going to make is just that what you see as improved basketball and good play in your book is not anywhere near the book that I read. So, but that's just somebody who's played the game a bit on that court and done things. So, no big deal. Move on.
And my comment acknowledges that, Steve. I think Mike probably interpreted that.
Indiana's not played
better.
good basketball. They are so disoriented and so dysfunctional. I mean, I somehow think they're going to win tonight. I do too. But whatever. Move on. I don't want to talk about Indiana
I'll make a
anymore.
comment to this.
I'm tired of talking about
Steve?
Indiana. I'm tired of talking about Indiana.
All right, just one comment. This isn't about Indiana. This could be about anybody. They haven't closed the last two games out, but they've played winning games to get to that point. They've played very well.
There's too many dysfunctional parts for them to close it out. There's a reason why they're not closing it out. There's too many dysfunctional parts.
Tonight they won't have to. They'll have a 14-point lead in the last 3 minutes, and it won't matter. That's what I'm saying.
That's why it's called gambling. Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
No big deal.
All right. Anything else before we go to On This Day, Bobby?
Before we go to On This Day, I don't think so. I mean, I think we nailed the stuff I wanted to basically talk about, the MLB tidbit and the I really wanted to focus on the games tonight because I really like those 3 games and the 2 NBA and the Indiana, and I like Ohio State. So it's going to be a big day on the TSR and but as far as the On This Day, if we can jump into that, 1989. I didn't realize this was the year until I saw this. This was the day that the Cowboys parted with Tom Landry after 29 years. And I guess it makes sense because Johnson came in right after, and I knew that was early 90s. I just didn't think about it, and Tom Landry, I was a kid during his time, and I just respected him and the cowboy, not the cowboy hat, but the little hat he would wear, and I don't know what kind of hat that is called, but the little hat and the suit.
Fedora.
But I don't know much about the man, Mike, and so I'd like you to get your comments a little bit on Tom Landry. All I know is the legend. I don't really know. If you can comment on that, I appreciate it.
Actually, he was part of maybe the greatest coaching staff anybody's ever seen. That was with the New York Giants, where he coordinated the defense, and Vince Lombardi coordinated the offense. They won a world championship, I think, in 58 or 59. The thing about Landry was he was one of the most innovative coaches.
Mike, who was the head coach? Who was the head coach on that team?
On what team?
Oh, the Giants in 58-59.
Nobody cares.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't know. I mean,
nobody really cares. But,
all right.
No, I mean, it was
my apologies for asking. I just was curious because they've had that two great offensive defensive coordinators. I wonder who was the head coach.
Jim Lee Howe,
no big deal.
Jim Lee Howe was the head coach, but the story of Jim Lee Howe is this. Once Landry and Lombardi left, Jim Lee Howe was done. I mean, he was a great coach in the fact that he hired those two. But that's about as far as it goes for Jim Lee Howe. And I'm serious. Nobody knows who the coach of that team was, hardly, because everybody knows why they won. And they won because of Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi.
Right.
And it's hard not to.
I wasn't asking to be a dick. I was curious to see, okay, you got that good assistants. Who's the head coach?
No, and I didn't answer that it didn't matter because I was being a dick, because I knew. It didn't matter to anybody.
You know, I just Googled, there's a little known fact that there was a young kid, about 6 years old, named Bill Belichick, who was the water boy on that team.
Yeah, and that same kid in 1976, when he was like 24, got his first job under Ted Marchibroda, the old Baltimore Colts and then later Indianapolis Colts coach too. So I think that's where he got his first job, and he was in his 20s. The thing about Landry was he was a guy that was taken as having no personality, not really caring about his players. He had Tech Schramm, Gil Brandt with the computer analysis and all that. But when you look at Landry, he was innovative. I mean, you look at the shotgun offense, the flex defense. I mean, you guys remember the flex where Randy White would drop off and your defensive tackle would actually be about 2 yards away from the center instead of being up on the line of scrimmage. And the reason he did that was to give angles and to make the fact that White was a little bit undersized and quicker, to use that to his advantage. His biggest problem is this is a guy that, if it wasn't for Lombardi and the Packers, would probably be, hell, they might have the Super Bowl trophy named the Tom Landry trophy, because in the 60s, you had the game in 66 where Meredith throws the interception. They lose 34-27 at Dallas. And then you get the Ice Bowl. They lose 17-14 on the quarterback sneak. And the knock against Landry for the first 11 or 12 years of his career was he was a great coach, but he couldn't win a big game. He gets to Super Bowl V, and the Cowboys are a heavy favorite against the Colts. And it's the Baltimore Colts, and there's no banner in Indianapolis for this, by the way, I don't think. But they get upset by the Colts, and everybody's freaking out. And once again, Landry can't win the big one. They get to Super Bowl VI, played the Miami Dolphins and Don Shula. One of the most dominant performances in NFL history. They shut down Miami, beat them 24-3. The thing about Landry is, and we talk about Belichick, he's probably the closest to Belichick when you get, I mean, he didn't win the amount of Super Bowls, but he went to the playoffs, I think, like 18 consecutive seasons. Hell, at one point, I think they won like 17 or 18 consecutive opening games to the season. The thing that stands out most to me with Landry, of course, he's a Hall of Famer. He won 2 Super Bowls, won 270 games. I think his preparation for games was unparalleled. If you look, I've talked to a few guys that have got to play for him, and they said everything he did was like clockwork. Everything was planned out practice-wise, everything to the minute. It did not vary from that. Was also, World War II. He was a co-pilot of a B-17 bomber. I think he flew, it was double-digit missions over Europe. I don't remember how many, but it was like more than 20. And I talked to a guy by the name of Thomas Hollywood Henderson. You guys remember Hollywood?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Now, Hollywood has some issues. And Hollywood had problems with drugs and stuff. And he said, I always hated Tom Landry, and Tom Landry eventually got rid of him. But after Landry got rid of him, Landry, every couple of years, would check up on him. And, Landry helped Hollywood Henderson get clean. They held a fundraiser for Hollywood where Landry came in, gave a big speech, got a lot of money. And Hollywood Henderson today is doing excellent, no drugs for like 20 or 30 years. And the thing about Tom Landry was he was a man that really believed in God, and he loved his players, but he tried to keep a separation because, they say it's hard. You can't be best friends with your players, but you can be after they're done playing for you. And when you talk to him, Roger Staubach lives in Cincinnati. I got to talk to him for like 5 minutes at an event like 5 or 6 years ago. And most of that conversation was me asking about Tom Landry. Because Tom Landry was one of, I think this, when you look at the way he innovated the game, the way he won, I think he was one of the top 5 coaches of all time. I think him and Chuck Noll are probably the 2 most underrated coaches of all time. They don't get the credit that they deserve. And Landry was a guy that almost got fired a couple of years in because I think he only won like 1 or 2 games his first 3 years at Dallas. And then he turned that team completely around. And also, I think he was a player coach for the Giants when he was the defensive coordinator. But I think this. You talked about 1989, and the sad thing was Jerry Jones is and always will be a scumbag. He hired Jimmy Johnson. That was great. But if you go look at the way that he fired Tom Landry, it was despicable. Tom Landry probably should have been fired in 1987. So I'm not complaining that Johnson fired him because it was time. And he wouldn't leave on his own. Somebody had to show him the door. But I don't think the way it was done was necessarily becoming of what Tom Landry had done for them. It ended up being the right move. I think it would have been the right move even if Johnson wouldn't have been that good because I think the game had passed Landry by. But the thing that stands out to me about Tom Landry is just the players you talk to like Hollywood Henderson and the impact he had on their lives even after he coached them. But I just think it's a shame he doesn't get more credit than what he's due. I mean, if you look at him compared to Vince Lombardi, I know Lombardi won the 5 world championships or whatever it was in the 60s. But impact on the game, there's very few guys outside of, the Paul Browns, Sid Gilmans, guys like that had a bigger impact than Tom Landry did on the game. And if you told me I was going to start a football team today and you could give me a 40-year-old Vince Lombardi to coach it or a 40-year-old Tom Landry, I'll take Tom Landry every time, Bobby.
Oh, Mike, that's such great stuff, and I just really enjoy listening to
I can't believe you didn't bring up Margot Adams and Wade Boggs since you're a baseball guy.
Yeah, his sex addiction and his chicken.
And his chicken. Remember,
addiction.
he always had to have fried chicken before every game, too.
Yeah, he did. And I had a question about the Cowboys, the Landry. So the Cowboys of that time they were ahead of their time, basically. They were doing the analytics with Gil Brandt before anybody.
Yeah, they were doing the analytics. If you watch the movie,
okay.
I know Steve likes this movie, North Dallas 40. I mean, North Dallas 40 was kind of based on
maybe
that.
one of the best
Peter
sports
Jett
movies of all
wrote the
time.
book. Yeah, it's a great movie. Yeah. And you can
great movie.
Do you remember who played the coach in that movie?
G.D. Spalding.
Okay. I'll just believe you on that. I don't remember, but he actually.
It's G.D. Spalding, yeah.
The bad thing about that was they basically just based it off how the Cowboys were. And you get a really bad view of Tom Landry. But I think Peter Jett was also a guy that didn't get to play very long and got cut and maybe wasn't that happy about that either.
Yeah, Mac Davis was the quarterback.
Nick Nolte, the wide receiver.
Nick Nolte played the wide receiver. Steve Forrester was the team owner. Conrad Dobler was the brother who had the issuis because
oh, hell, was Conrad? I didn't remember Conrad Dobler being in the movie.
Not Conrad Dobler. I'm sorry, not Conrad Dobler. It's Conrad.
Twitty?
It was a guy who was in, it was a guy that was in 9 to 5. Conrad, God darn it.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Damn.
Conrad, it was something
Charles
Conrad.
Durning.
He's passed away.
Charles Durning was in it, wasn't he?
Charles Durning was in it. He was he was the kind of he was the coach, wasn't he? No, he was the assistant coach or trainer. No, he was like the trainer or something. He was some. Yeah, I mean, it was such a great depiction of what the perception was of the Cowboys at that point in time. And like I said, look up the cast real quick. I mean,
Dabney Coleman,
yeah. John Red Coleman, same thing.
And
yeah.
then if I remember,
he was the brother.
Was it
Yeah.
John Matuzak in that too? Because he was the dude that threw the girl.
Oh,
in the
yeah,
pool.
Matuzak and Bo Svensson were the two linemen. Bo Svensson and John
You're
Matuzak.
looking it up now.
The two linemen. No, I'm not. No, honest to God, I'm not. I'm actually looking to see, because I think the Colts may actually have a 1970s banner hanging. I can't just tell if
you want to know something more interesting?
One.
I could get this guy to come on our show if you ever want to. Have you ever heard of Jeff Severson?
Who?
Jeff Severson.
No.
Jeff Severson.
I've heard the name.
He was Partridge in the movie, but Jeff is a country music singer that actually played in Super Bowl VII for the Redskins, and they call him the Singing Cowboy. But he played somebody named Partridge in that movie. But we could get him on.
Well, he was probably the wild and crazy defensive back. I'll bet.
I think he was, but I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, there was one because I remember at the party scene. No, I'm actually not looking it up. I remember that movie like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, I just remember. I didn't even remember he was in the movie.
All I remember is Mac Davis calling Nick Nolte Poot all the time. Poot, you got to learn to play the game, Poot. You got to learn to play the numbers.
Yeah, but we could have Jeff come on the show and sing to you sometime.
That's probably one of the most under-talked about great sports movies of all time is North Dallas 40.
I agree.
It's just too old. Yeah. It's just too old because it was a pretty, it was the first time when they came out and really,
I think.
Yeah, it's the first time they gave you kind of a real depiction of what really went on in professional sports, about the womanizing, the partying, the drugs. I remember Delbert, the guy they shot up, he tore his hamstring and they shot him up.
Yeah.
The Chicago game.
He
blew his knee out and they mashed his face in. Yeah. And then they're talking about taking out the linemen on for the Chicago team. They're like, damn it, just undercut him and take him out. The double team and take him out.
Today. You want to talk to Jeff? Jeff's cool. Jeff
that'd be great. That's a show. Yeah, that's a show in itself talking about that movie because there were so many great football things in that movie that probably still go on today to some degree. But yeah, I just watched it probably 2 months ago. It was on HBO or something, and it's one of those movies like The Godfather. When it comes on, you don't ever turn it off.
Yeah, see, Jeff was in a bunch more TV shows and movies too, so that'll give you something.
If it's the character I think it is, I don't know for sure because I'm not looking at a cast list right now. I'm actually just doing this off the top of my head. But if it's the guy I think he is.
Another football movie he was in The Best of Times too. He was Johnny O. You remember The Best of Times? Kurt Russell and Robin Williams, where they go back to try to replay a game. He also was a recurring character in Lou Grant, Simon and Simon, Laverne and Shirley.
I'll look up the cast now and see who I think it is. Let me look it up now. I was trying to see. I don't think there's a 1970 championship banner hanging in Luke's soil. They've got one for the Colts. I just was looking it up.
There shouldn't be.
Go ahead and talk.
Jeff was also on 9.5 Weeks, Double Deception, something called Posers. I don't know what the hell that is, but I'm actually looking.
Let me see. That's who I think it was.
Yeah.
The Tuesday, G.D. Spalding, Steve Forrest, Dale Hannon was the girl, Coleman, Mac Davis. God, Mac Davis is aged. He was on the Elvis special the other night. He has really aged.
Damn, he's still alive. Hey, Bobby's still on.
Yeah, I
Bobby. You there, Bobby?
Well, talk to Bobby. Let me see.
I'm here, and I wanted to finish. I sat and I listened to Landry, and then I kind of dropped out of it mentally with the movie talk, just because
Steve likes
I
movies.
was thinking about other things. Now I'm back on it, and I wanted to ask Steve, and then I have a comment, which is not Indiana comment. It's sports betting and learning. Okay, this is a learning moment here. But I wanted to ask Steve, did you ever lose to
that's
Wisconsin?
the guy I thought he was. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, Jeff. I'm sorry. Jeff was the guy I thought he was. I just looked him up. Yeah.
Yeah.
He played defensive back. He was crazy. He's crazy.
If you want, I'll give him a call today. So.
Oh, give him a call. Let's get him on. Oh, that's great. I'm sorry, Bobby. Go ahead.
Did you ever lose to Wisconsin, Steve?
No. He didn't lose to Wisconsin.
Lost to everybody.
You didn't lose to Wisconsin, did
Yeah.
you? When?
I'm sure I did in 4 years. We didn't play him there.
You didn't lose to Northwestern, did you?
No, we didn't lose to Northwestern.
I don't think you lost to Wisconsin either, because Wisconsin sucked as bad as Northwestern back then.
Well,
I mean, the
they
season
were
series
tough. Joe
is
Trinelli.
81 to
They
39.
had Larry. Actually, they had Larry Petty. They had Joe Trinelli. They were actually a decent basketball team. I mean, I find it hard to believe I went undefeated against Wisconsin.
I find it hard to believe that you by yourself would too, but I think that Indiana team you played on for 4 years probably never lost to them.
I would tend to agree. 81
all I remember is they had this bruiser kid named Joe Trinelli who was my height and about 50 pounds heavier than me, and he played meaner than I played. And I always got to guard him. I swear to God, I never came off a basketball court so bloodied, bruised, and sore than every time I played against Joe Trinelli. And it's one of the guys I have the most respect for of anybody I ever played against that didn't have the God-gifted talent of a Greg Kelser or Magic Johnson or something of that nature. This kid he was like me, only probably stronger, meaner than me.
Definitely
and,
better looking.
He was definitely better. He was Italian. Yeah, Trinelli, are you kidding?
Yeah, but
Italian.
I bet his wife isn't better looking than Steve's. I would bet that. I would lay odds on that.
I don't go that. I don't go there. But there was another kid at Kentucky like that, Chuck Verderber, who was kind of the same way.
I remember Chuck Verderber.
And Chuck Verderber was another kid who just came out and just played like I played, just like we're just going to go to war. It's kind of like we're just going to bang the crap out of each other. And I always remember guarding him and Trinelli, but I would find it hard to believe. Look it up, Mike. I mean, if you can, real quickly.
I'm looking right now.
I'm sure we didn't.
1981, Wisconsin won 11 games. They lost to Indiana by 25, lost to Indiana by 7.
Okay, so 81 we beat him twice.
Chuck Cernelli
Look at 1980.
did not play on that team.
Joe Cernelli. Joe
Trinelli. Didn't either. There was no Trinellis.
He may have graduated by senior year. He may have been a year ahead of me. He may have graduated.
We'll find out in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
80. I don't believe you ever lost to him. Because I probably wouldn't even talk to you if you lost to Wisconsin. That was important to me back then.
I think we did
Mike.
1 year. I remember a bad plane ride home.
Yeah, Bobby.
While you're looking that up, I want to make a point, and it's not about Indiana, like I said, but this is a teaching moment for the fans. When you're trying to pick winners and make money and do it daily, okay, picking winners is all about finding the right spots and anticipating what will happen and being able to sift through the storylines of what got you to this moment. Odds makers, lines makers, their job is to set the line where they will get two-way action. Well, they will get, 50% of the bets on Wisconsin, 50% of the bets on Indiana, and they make the juice. Then they can't lose. So what I want to point out is this. Because Indiana is so chronicled, they've lost 12 out of 13. It's down on Miller, down on the team, down on the guys, just like everybody on the IU shows, everywhere, right? You can't make the line really what it should be, okay? You have to make Wisconsin a small favorite in this spot, even though it's a terrible line, okay? If Indiana is not playing well, not playing with purpose, hasn't improved, then this line could be correct and you would be on Wisconsin. But this line, preseason, would have been Indiana by probably 6 points. And so if I let you move the line by 8, -6 Indiana, +2 Wisconsin, +2 Indiana. That's an 8-point difference between those two numbers. If I let you do that every night on every game, you would have a house bigger than the house that Shaq's selling right now for $28 million. He got his house in the market. It was $28. He lowered it to $21. He's giving somebody a deal out there. It's in Orlando, Florida. So what I'm trying to say is if I would let you move the line 8 points on 6 games a night, you'd win 5 of them. You'd do it every night forever, and you build up your bankroll and you'd have millions of dollars. this is one of those games. You see, what you try to do is you try to find value. And that's why what I said was when people that are complaining about not getting the breaks down the stretch with their wagers, what that really means is they're in a game that they really shouldn't have been in anyways. It's not my job to try to eke out the last minute and score the backdoor cover or hit the free throw that covers for you. When you hit those, you're lucky. When it goes against you, you're unlucky. But those aren't the games you're going to make money on consistently if all the games you're betting are coming down to the last 30 seconds and the last minute, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. Baseball is a little different story, and we can talk about that later. That is a different story. There are so many one-run games in baseball. That's why the run line's a horrible bet. But we can get into that later.
All right.
So the bottom line is I project this to be Indiana more of a -5, -6 game as the teams are competing right now on the court. It's more towards that than it is the line that the lines makers have to put out to get 50% on each side. And that's got nothing to do with knowing the game or knowing this and knowing that. That's what I'm trying to portray to the fans and let them understand.
And we can wrap up
with
this. In 1980, Joe Chernick averaged 10.9 points a game, which means in 1 year he scored more than Risley did in 4. And Wisconsin.
Exactly. No doubt. He's a great player.
I know. Wisconsin did beat you guys in 1980 by 2 points at Wisconsin. That's the game you remember.
It was a bad plane ride home, I remember.
Well, yeah. I can tell you this.
Chernick was a great player.
Anytime you go to Wisconsin, it's a bad ride home.
Yeah. We always stayed at the, what was the name of the hotel? It was on a lake. They always had Winter Festival going on there, and it was so freaking cold there. We didn't stay downtown. The saltwater or seawater hotel. I'll never forget it. I loved going to Wisconsin's beautiful. Madison's a great town. It's a great town. But we just, it was so cold every time we went there. It was brutal. But anyway, so I found it hard to believe we've gone because they had Larry Petty. They had Larry Petty too, who was a good Big Ten center. They were not a bad basketball team back then. I don't even remember who their coach was. Was it who was their coach? It wasn't Steve. Wasn't Hodges? What? Not
Larry
Hodges.
something.
Larry something.
Cofield.
Yeah.
Was it Cofield?
I don't remember.
It might be. I don't
They
know.
were not a bad basketball team.
But
okay, back to a few points here. No, hang on.
God,
Let me a few points here.
First off, a few points of what?
First off, I've seen Shaq's house in Isleworth. It's up for sale for $28 million. It is freaking huge. I played golf at Isleworth, which is where a lot of the professional golfers lived and played. So it's in Windermere, and I've seen his house. It is the biggest house I've ever seen in my life. And at $21 million, that house is probably a steal. The other thing that's interesting, Bobby, is Will Chamberlain's house is for sale, which sits on a mountain. Yeah, I actually tried to get. I thought we could tour it, but they wanted financial records before they would let you go tour the house. And it's for sale for like $25 million. So I thought I'm just gonna call a realtor and see if I can just go because I actually have a realtor's license. So I'm gonna call another realtor and say I want to tour the house. And they're like, okay, we need to see. We're only letting people with financial records to prove they can afford to buy the house because it's Will Chamberlain's house. But yeah, this was about 2 months ago. It was up for sale. I don't know if it's sold since then or not. So that's just two interesting facts about houses. That's all I really had. Other than my whole point with basketball was not to question your ability to make book or to pick judges. It's just that what I see in Indiana right now is not good basketball. I think they're going to win tonight. I really do think they're going to win tonight. I think they're due. They can't be this bad this long. They are playing better basketball. They're just not connecting with the coach and the team. But I think tonight they connect and they pull a win out. I really think they do.
All right, guys. We're going to go ahead and
sounds good, Steve. I agree.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a good pick.
All right. We're going to wrap it up. Tomorrow we will be back with Sarah Uran.
Wait, Mike, I got something else. Mike, I got something else.
God.
Mike, I got
What,
something else.
Steve?
I just want to say thank you for doing a great job of hosting today.
Yeah,
That's all.
you're welcome, Steve. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up. Sarah Uran from New York Yankees training camp live on site tomorrow. Bobby Sheridan will be in to talk a little baseball. If you didn't know, Bobby was actually a draft pick in 1987 by the San Diego Padres.
And Bobby, you'll be on at 9 o'clock with us, right? You're coming on because I don't know diddly squat about baseball.
So like every other.
Steve, if you would like me to come on, at 9, I will.
We're counting on you coming on at 9 because Sarah is live from Tampa. She's down at spring training.
Sounds good.
You and her can hash it out about spring training. And Mike will tell you all about the 1975-76 Cincinnati Reds, which I love hearing his stories about that team.
I can tell you about anything, Steve. And the Reds swept the Yankees in the 1976 World Series. All right, guys.
Okay, Mike. What's the track bar do? Mike, what's the track bar do?
The what?
The track bar.
I don't care. It's not a sport. All right, guys. We're going to wrap it up. And if you want, what? Oh my God, you're getting to be like Steve.
Real
what,
quick.
Bobby?
No, I never do this, but I have to. Steve, Mike, I never interrupt you. I don't. But on this one, I want to just for a second because if anyone that follows me on Twitter at Sheridan Report will see that my header picture, I don't know what that's called, the picture on top, that goes across your thing, is Cincinnati Reds, a big red machine, and that's I didn't, this is before I knew that this is before I even came on the show. And so, there's a lot of good karma that goes on. And, Mike, I consider that a compliment to you. And you and I have a good connection already. And Steve and I do as well.
What a fuck-ass. I'm going to send you my banner that's got 5 national championship banners sitting across the top of Assembly Hall. Why don't you run that banner, which I run on mine?
Why would
really,
truly? Do that? That's not like the 1975-76 Reds, Steve.
You have no connection with the 75-76 Reds.
Who doesn't?
You don't, other than being a fan.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, I used to go there and watch them.
Okay, Bobby, don't. Oh God,
I just find it interesting that that's my banner, and then Mike's. That's his team. That's his childhood. It's interesting. That's all. I spend every morning talking to you guys now, and. I wonder
if Lucas needs some help up in Canada.
I don't know, but if I was you, I would get a freaking visa and I'd get my ass up north as quick as you can, Steve. Because you know what? I'm thinking about replacing you with my coon dog because he's standing here like he wants a headset. So, and he's pretty smart. He's not really.
Yeah, but can the coon dog catch a frisbee like that dog did for the Paulos?
I guarantee you this, my coon dog can out-jump that frisbee dog anytime. He ain't going to catch it, but, he can out-jump him. And one of these days, he's going to learn how to slap me 5 and sit. He's only 2 years old. All right, we're going to wrap the show up. But he looks cute. He's got really long ears. He reminds me of Steve.
Risley's dog. I've seen Steve's dog jump into the pool, and that's pretty darn impressive. I've seen that on video, and that's pretty darn impressive. So.
I got a coon dog that can jump an 8-foot fence.
Oh,
and
man.
if you don't believe me, we can call the dog sitter that, has to keep him on a leash now when he's there because he's the only dog they got that could jump the fence. So if there's ever a dog dunking contest, I'm pretty sure my dog would be Dr. J and Dominic Wilkins, all wrapped into one. With that, we are going to wrap up the show. Remember, 11 o'clock tonight, me and Jeremiah Price will be live with Inside Boxing Daily. Tomorrow night, we've got the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show, which will be a review of tonight's hopeful win against the Wisconsin Badgers. That'll be at 8 o'clock Eastern. And tomorrow, as we said, noon, Sarah Urin and Bobby. Sarah will be at New York Yankees training camp. And tomorrow night again, Inside Boxing Daily again with me and Jeremiah. So, remember, follow the Sheridan Report on Twitter, at Sheridan Report. You can get their website, thesheridanreport.com. If you want to bet, you want to win some money, you might as well have a little bit of inside knowledge. And then, to top it off, you can come on and listen to Steve pick games. When you put them together, you can't miss because Steve's never right, so pick the opposite of Steve. I want to remind everybody you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Brian Rauf, Bobby Sheridan, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.